Good morning, children. How are you all? Good, very good. This is English for class 8. So today's topic is, guess what? Yes, active voice and passive voice. Yeah, you got it right. So let's begin this session. Active voice. In most English sentences with an action verb, the subject performs the action denoted by the verb. These examples show that the subject is doing the verb's what action? See, look here, children. See, children, here. The man must have eaten 5 hamburgers. The man is subject here. Is doing what? He's doing some action. Action of what? Eating. So eating is the verb. Marilyn mailed the letter. What's the subject here? Marilyn. That means the one who's doing the work is the subject. So what's the subject here? Marilyn, because she's doing the work. What work is she doing? Mailing. So that's a verb. Colorful parrots live in the rainforest. Parrots is the subject. And doing what? Living. Where? In the forest. Okay, now because the subject does or acts upon the verb in such sentences, the sentences are said to be in the active voice. Why? Because the subject is doing the work. The action is done by the subject. So that is why it is active voice. Okay, next one. Passive voice. Children, see. One can change the normal word order of many active sentences. Those with a direct object so that the subject is what? No longer active, but is instead being acted upon by the verb or passive. Now, you have to note in these examples. See here, children. 5 hamburgers must have been eaten by the man. Hamburgers is the subject. Are being eaten is the verb. The letter was mailed by Marilyn. The letter was being mailed by Marilyn. So look at the subject and look at the verb. Because the subject is being acted upon, that is passive, such sentences are said to be in the passive voice. So they are being acted upon. They are not doing the work. Note, colorful parrots live in the rainforest cannot be changed to passive voice because the sentence does not have an object, a direct object. To change a sentence from active to passive voice, do the following. Let's see what's that. Move the active sentence's direct object into the sentence's subject slot. Okay, active. Marilyn mailed the letter. Letter, it has a direct object, that is letter. Okay? Place the active sentence's subject into a phrase beginning with the preposition by. Marilyn mailed the letter. The letter was mailed by Marilyn. Add a form of auxiliary verb be to the main verb and change the main verb's form. Marilyn mailed the letter. The letter was mailed by Marilyn. Because the passive voice sentences necessarily add words and change the normal doer action receiver of action direction, they may make the reader work harder to understand the intended meaning. As the examples below illustrate, a sentence in active voice flows more smoothly and is easier to understand than the passive voice. Yes, it's true. Okay, children, have a look. At each concert, the soprano sang at least one tune from a well-known opera. So, who's the doer at that? Who's doing the action? The doer, soprano. And what action is being done? Singing. He sang at least. Who's the receiver? One tune. So that's the receiver of the action. It is in active voice. Please note carefully. At each concert, now passive. At each concert, at least one tune from a well-known opera was sung by the soprano. The receiver of the action comes first in the passive. So tune, action, sung. Who did that action? Soprano. So this is what? Passive voice. Now look here. Asbestos abatement teams will remove large chunks of asbestos-laden material from the hallways on the second and third floors. Who's the doer of the action? The team, abatement team. Okay, what's the action that is being done? Removing it. Remove. Who's the receiver of the action? Material. Now, passive. Large chunks of asbestos-laden material will be removed from the hallways on the second and third floors by. The doer of the action comes later in the sentence. So it is passive voice. It is generally preferable to use the active voice. To change a passive voice sentence into an active voice sentence, simply reverse the steps shown above. Let's have a look. Move the passive sentence's subject into the active sentence's direct object slot. Okay. The letter was mailed by Marilyn. Remove the auxiliary verb be from the main verb and change the main verb's form if needed. Let's see. The letter was mailed. Yeah, that is passive. Place the passive sentence's object of the preposition by into the slot. Passive voice, active voice. See there. Because it is more direct, most writers prefer to use the active voice whenever possible. It is easier to use, children. That's the reason, The passive voice may be a better choice. However, when the doer of the action is unknown, unwanted, or unneeded in the sentence, then it is better to use passive voice. Okay, examples. The ballots have been counted. Sometimes our efforts are not fully appreciated. The writer wishes to emphasize the action of the sentence rather than doer of the. Yes, here the action is emphasized. What is done or what was done, not who's doing it. See, that is more important and that is emphasized here. Examples. The high jump record was finally broken last Sunday. A suspect was questioned for 16 hours by the police. Active voice. In most English sentences with an action verb, the subject, the subject performs the action denoted by the verb. These examples show that the subject is doing the verb's action. Let's have a look. The man must have eaten 5 hamburgers. Who's doing the work? Man. Marilyn mailed the letter. Who's doing the work? Marilyn. Colorful parrots. Parrots live in the rainforest. Who? Parrots. Because the subject does or acts upon the verb in such sentences, the sentences are said to be in the active voice. In very simple words, the doer of the action is the subject. Okay, that is active voice. Very simple. Easy to remember, children. Okay, now passive voice, children. One can change the normal word order of many active sentences. those with a direct object so that the subject is no longer active but is instead being acted upon by the verb. Note in these examples how the subject-verb relationship has changed. 5 hamburgers must have been eaten by the man. Hamburgers subject are being eaten. See, the letter was mailed by Marilyn. The letter is the subject, being mailed verb. Huh? Yes, because the subject is being acted upon, such sentences are said to be in the passive voice. To change a sentence from active to passive, what should we do? Move the active sentence's direct object into the sentence's subject slot. See, active, passive. Marilyn mailed the letter. Letter is the direct object. What is she mailing? Letter. It is direct object. And passive, letter is the subject, children. Place the active sentence's subject into a phrase beginning with the preposition by. Active, Marilyn mailed the letter. Passive, the letter was mailed by Marilyn. Add a form of the auxiliary verb to the main verb and change the main verb's form. Active, passive, again the same example is there, children. Yeah, because passive voice sentences are necessarily add words and change normal doer action, receiver of action, direction. Yeah, okay. See, active voice, children. At each concert, the soprano sang at least one tune from a well-known opera. See who's the doer, who's the receiver. And see what happens in the passive voice. The receiver of the action is placed in the beginning of the sentence. This is the easiest way to remember. Okay, active voice. Asbestos abatement teams will remove large chunks. Who will remove? The team. What is the verb? Removing. Yes? And see what happens in passive. The receiver of the action is placed first in the sentence. So that is the easiest way to remember. To change a passive voice sentence into an active voice sentence, simply reverse the steps. Yeah, that is the easiest thing to do, children. Passive voice, active voice. Again, the same example. See, remove the auxiliary verb be. This I have already done. The letter was mailed. Mailed the letter. See, passive voice. Because it is more direct, most writers prefer to use the active voice whenever possible. See here, the ballots have been counted. Sometimes our efforts are not fully appreciated. The writer wishes to emphasize the action of the sentence rather than the doer of the action. The high jump record was finally broken last Saturday. See, look at that example. Active and passive voice rules for conversion of sentence. Below are the active passive voice rules to follow for changing an active sentence into passive voice. Before heading to the rules of active passive voice, let's check the example of active and passive for better understanding. This is very important, children. You must know these rules. Otherwise, you cannot convert. Conversion of active and passive voice examples. Rita wrote a letter. See, subject. Rita is the subject plus verb. Which one? Wrote. What's the object here? Letter. It has a direct object. Rules for active passive voice conversions. The first rule. Identify the subject plus verb plus object. SVO. Subject plus verb plus object in the active sentence to convert to passive voice. Example, he drives car. Interchange the object and subject with each other. She knits sweater. Passive, the sweater is knitted by her. Very simple. Rule 3. In passive voice, sometimes the subject is not used. That is, the subject in passive voice can be omitted if the sentence without it gives enough meaning. Yes, in some cases, sometimes it is not required. Milk is sold in liters. Change the base verb in the active sentence into the past participle. See, she prepares dinner. The dinner is prepared by her. She knows him. He is known to her. Juice fills the jar. The jar is filled with juice. Some examples. While conversion of active voice sentence to passive voice sentence, the pronoun used in the sentence also changes in the following manner. Active voice pronoun, passive voice pronoun. I, me, we, us, he, him, she, her. You have to memorize all this. You have to remember. They, them. You remains you. It remains it. Rule 6. Use the suitable helping or auxiliary verb. Is, am, are, was, etc. The rules for using auxiliary verbs in passive voice sentences are different for each tense. A letter is written by her. A book was not bought by her. Chocolates are being eaten by them. See, verb plus past participle and the subject. Candidates can watch the video on active passive voice rules and concepts. See, rules of active passive voice in English grammar. The writer wishes to emphasize the action of the sentence rather than the doer of the action. High jump record was broken last Saturday. A suspect was questioned for 16 hours by the police. So, see some examples, children. Active, passive. He writes an essay. An essay is written by him. Sheena does the housework. The housework is done by Sheena. She cares for the rabbit. The rabbit is being cared for by her. By her. Jacob always plays the guitar. The guitar is always played by Jacob. Now, these sentences are present continuous tense, active and passive. Let's have a look. They are eating bananas. The bananas are being eaten by them. Bob is drawing a diagram. A diagram is being drawn by Bob. Samtha is playing the piano. A piano is being played by Samtha. She's waiting for Rima. Rima is being waited for by her. Okay, present perfect tense. See, children, let's have a look. Has he done the work? Has the work been done by him? Have they left the apartment? Has the apartment been left by them? He created his masterpiece. This masterpiece is created by him. So that's how you have to write. He read the newspaper. The newspaper is being read by him. Note, except certain exemptions, no passive voice formation for the following tenses can be formed. Yeah, you have to remember all these. Continuous tense. Yeah, see. Simple past tense. Ria paid the bills. The bills were paid by Ria. The teacher called the student. The student was called by the teacher. She did not buy the fruits. The fruits were not bought by her. Past progressive continuous tense. They were waiting for him. He was being waited for by them. Asta was learning French. French was being learnt by Asta. She was playing kabaddi. Kabaddi was being played by her. Past perfect tense. She won the match. The match had been won by her. I had finished her work. Her work had been finished by me. She won the match. See? I had finished her work. As I told you, he had missed the last metro. The last metro had been missed by him. Simple future tense, children. He will write a letter. A letter will be written by him. He will repair her cycle. Her cycle will be repaired by him. He shall start the meeting. The meeting will be started by him. future tense. Meena will not have changed the bed sheet. The bed sheet will not have been changed by Meena. They will have won the match. The match will have been won by them. Reena will have washed the skirt. The skirt will have been washed by Reena. So children, in this session, I have done active and passive voice. Note down all the rules and everything, the examples, and go through again and again. Yes, exams are fast approaching. You'll have your second periodic test. After that, you'll have your annual examination. You have to read, revise all the chapters very, very thoroughly. All chapters are equally important. All subjects are equally important. So you have to read, revise again and again so that you're very thorough with all the lessons. You should know all the lessons thoroughly so that you can answer any and every question without making mistakes. That's all. Goodbye.